Hi, and welcome to Decoding AQ, helping you to learn the tools, mindsets, and actions to thrive in an ever-changing world.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Decoding AQ, where we unravel the fabric of adaptability in our ever-evolving world. And today, I'm thrilled to have a truly special guest. We have Rod Roddenberry, a visionary in the realm of science fiction and beyond. So welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Absolutely. Wow, a visionary.
Well, we'll get
We'll
into
work
that.
on that one. We'll work on that one.
We'll get into that. So, as the son of Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry, Rod has not only upheld the legacy of this iconic series, but has expanded its horizons. As the CEO of Roddenberry Entertainment, from Star Trek Discovery to Star Trek Picard, Rod continues to explore new frontiers in storytelling. But Rod's adventures aren't confined to the cosmos. He's an avid scuba diver, leading the Roddenberry Dive Team in a quest to uncover the mysteries of our oceans and inspiring environmental stewardship. And when it comes to making a difference, the Roddenberry Foundation is at the forefront. It's investing in groundbreaking medical research to fight diseases like Alzheimer's. So join us as we dive into a conversation with Rod and how his own life has been a journey of discovery, adaptability, and creativity. So where I'd like to start off with is, what do you love about diving and being underwater, Rod?
It's actually been a while since I've been in the water, but I've always been quite passionate since I'd say since 92, 93. Um, I'll tell you quickly what it really started as I was graduating high school in 92. And before that, I just turned 16 and got my license. It was my first, in my mind, like adult thing I could do. I could be an adult, go on my own, pay to take this course, pass it or fail on my own, and now go out in the world and risk my life on my own. Um, so honestly, I mean, sure, the diving part I do love and I have fallen in love with in so much of a greater way. But what got me there was this really cool sort of adult thing that is life encompassing. I mean, you are putting yourself in another world. You cannot breathe underwater. You have to rely on equipment. And you can make all these parallels, which are true. It is like being in space. It is like visiting an alien planet. Those are aliens that you are seeing because they're not what we're used to up here. So the exploration, the excitement, it really took me by storm, and I fell in love with it. All the different kinds of environments that you can be in. You can have every single emotion underwater. I've had excitement, fear, exhilaration, curiosity. There's just so much to do. And as I did it more and more and more, and got busier and busier and busier, it became actually a place of refuge for me. It was I'm not very spiritual, but that was my spiritual moment. I'd spend anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour underwater. You can't really hear anything except for the crackling and the sounds of the ocean, and you're experiencing on the outside, but you're also experiencing on the inside, and you've got your own dialogue, and you don't have the normal dialogue that you might have out in everyday life. And I'm sure it can be different for everyone, but there is a presence, there is a here and now that you are fully aware of. And I don't think I do that when I'm above water. So it is my spirituality as well. And I do need to get back into it for sure.
It's interesting. Often certain things happen for us at pivotal moments in our lives, right? And you talked almost like becoming an adult at this moment in time, discovering scuba diving that allowed you this element of unpredictability, uncertainty, and discovery, together with, oh, now it's down to me and my control and the technology that I'm using. And of course, it's a very unpredictable environment as well. And so there's, I'm sure, over the 1,000+ dives that you've done, this ability that when we're very present, when we're very in tune with the environment and things shift and adapt, that you've come across certain responses to unforeseen things, certain challenges. How do you think that shaped maybe some of your own thinking and approach to different projects or different things that have happened in your life? Is there any correlations you can see that you've learned by being in that environment, what you've brought to your normal, perhaps daily life?
This may not be a direct answer to what you're asking, but I mean, I could tell you some of the most significant learning experiences have been making mistakes underwater. I mean, that's how we learn everywhere, right? Making mistakes, and you can become very complacent if you've been diving a lot, and make some decisions that might not be well thought out. And I've had an experience, without going into so much detail, but there were some caverns in Florida, not caves, but caverns. But one of the walls had fallen down, so the water was very murky. Anyhow, long story short, you go in, and I'd never been there before, and I was going to take some pictures of some people for them. My battery is bad, went out, got a battery. I said, I'll meet you. You guys go ahead, I'll meet you in there. And I went down and I started pulling myself in light, and it's very murky. And I had never been in there, so I didn't really know where I was going. And I started to basically panic because, it had been a while. My air was starting to get low. I didn't know if I should turn around, if it was the same amount to go out, or if I should keep going. I didn't know how much there was. Long story short, really stupid. And then when panic sets in, panic kills you underwater. I mean, it is the #1 killer. The minute you panic, that is when things go wrong. And it set in. And luckily, I was able to keep going and compose myself as much as I could, not knowing what was going to happen. And I did come out on the other side. But anyhow, not too many of those experiences, but enough to teach a very strong lesson. Thinking you might die is something that is a learning experience. And so I won't say it changed everything in my life, but I definitely grew up quite a bit in those moments.
It's an interesting perspective, isn't it, when we're faced in something with so much unknown, so much uncertainty, and then a catastrophic risk in our mind of something, how it paralyzes our decision making, how all of our physiology, our breath, all sorts of things shift. And I think that happens a lot in many ways, right? In life, that there's an uncertainty and it affects us in our decision making, in our panic, and I don't recognize this. And you mentioned, do I continue or do I turn back? In that example, that happens all the time, doesn't it, in life? And I guess experiencing it at an extreme allows you to then really consider and think. At one point, all other is then relative to that. Then the beauty and fragility of our existence of those things. And I wonder,
it's nice to be humbled as well, by the way. And my confidence, my arrogance, my overly casual sort of sentiments of diving at that point were really at the forefront, and having an experience like that really I knocks you back into place. Yes, it does. So somewhat necessary. And I don't want to come off as overly arrogant, but for me, it was like riding a bike. I didn't take into consideration that I was actually going to ride my bike in traffic or something that whatever. I can make an analogy, and that changes the entire game. So, very,
for
very
many
careless.
of us in our jobs, in our roles, in various things, there's days when we're on autopilot. I've done it. I'm doing it again. I'm turning up. I'm coming onto a Zoom. I'm doing this meeting, whatever it may be. And then suddenly a big thing happens that's unexpected, a pandemic. By the way, this has shifted. The company's been bought, or your job no longer exists, or these various catastrophic things can happen. How do we respond in that? Do we show up as somebody we regret who we were in that moment, or do we show up as somebody we're proud of at that moment? And we don't know till we face it, right?
That's a great point. Yep.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when was the last time you went diving, Rod? How long ago?
It's been over a year. I'd say about a year and a half. I've been kind of just doing the landlocked life, family man life for a little bit here. But and I'll be honest with you, getting older, I'm certainly not decrepit yet, but getting older and having some of these experiences makes you start categorizing things in your life, risks that you're willing to take and risks you're not. And all through diving, my experiences have been 99.8% wonderful and easy, but those few moments that have
Just
been
takes one.
concerning,
Yeah.
whether it happened to me or someone else, makes you question. And of course, listen, it's ongoing. The longer you stay out, the more you have these thoughts, and then you're like, oh, but it's been a while, and I feel even rustier. So you stay out longer, and it gets worse, and it just compounds and compounds.
It does.
You know, I can get back into diving quite easily and simply not do the crazy things that I might have been doing in the past.
Did you ever watch? I remember watching it a few months ago when I think when it came out, but Netflix did a little documentary series about freediving, and I think it was called something about deep breath, or something like that.
No, I didn't see it, but I've done a free
Ah,
diving course.
have you?
And
It was a phenomenal
yeah.
little documentary about this couple. I won't spoil it for you, but I'll send you the link to it. Really well done little documentary, and really compelling about just the pursuit of certain humans in the endeavor of pushing the extreme, you know, of how far, how long can we go, and what does that look like? And I guess that's part of the human condition, right? We can push extremes in a fictional world, and we can push extremes in the real world.
Sure.
And both of those bring different joy. And I'd like to actually dive into a little bit more around just the breadth of what your experiences have been so far in your chapters of your life, that, you know, from entertainment to environmental activism to philanthropy, you know, lots of different diverse fields. And I'm just interested as to what drives your passion in those different domains, and what aspects, you know, has grit played a role in pursuing it? Has different relationships? What's been driving that passion in each of those different areas for you, Rod?
Well, you know, considering my last name, you know, this 100% comes from Star Trek. And, you know, I don't want that to sound as if I watch episodes and they themselves do it. I obviously came into it a very different way than most people. Since my father did create Star Trek, I did spend most of my younger and teenage years rebelling and being a teenager and not caring about Star Trek, and liking Knight Rider and Starsky and Hutch and Star Wars even. But as I got older and we'll say the word matured a little bit, certainly after my father passed away, that kind of opened me up to you grow up a little bit when things like that happen. And that happened when I was 17. And you know, after that, I kind of you ask yourselves the questions, you know, you just the maturity of, well, who am I? What's my life? How do I fit in? I'm not Gene Roddenberry. I'm not even that interested in the entertainment industry, at least, you know, back then. And so that period of time when I was doing that and meeting Star Trek fans and going to conventions, I started to hear fans tell me all sorts of incredible stories about how this TV show really inspired them. And it gave them not just hope for the future, but in many cases, it inspired them to work beyond their perceived limitations or try to reach beyond those limitations. I mean, hope, inspiration is an incredibly powerful thing, is what I learned. And to have so many, I mean, just about every fan I meet, at the very least, say, it makes me believe in a better future. Well, I go back to watch all my shows, and, you know, while I enjoy them, I even enjoy them today, they don't make me inspired about a better future. And I'm not saying there's nothing out there that does this, but back then, I really didn't watch anything like that. So I kind of learned about Star Trek and the messaging from fans, and then became incredibly proud to have my last name and incredibly proud of my father, to know that I was a part of something that made people's lives better and made people proactively work for a better future, not just for themselves, but for everyone else. And so that was my holy shit moment. Wow, I'm part of something so amazing. And since then, it has consumed me. And in my own way, I try to carry that on in whatever I do.
And it was kind of this coming of age sort of pivotal moment, you know, as you mentioned before, 91, your father passes, you know, you're 17, then you discover not only scuba diving and those things, but also go on a journey to figure out who your dad was, what is Star Trek,
Yeah.
what are all of these things, and then evolving that to discover, who does Rod want to be?
Yes.
Who is Eugene?
Yes.
Who is Rod? What is that next piece of how do you show up? And we're all figuring it out as we go along,
I'm
right?
still doing it.
And it's I totally feel that energy of, what are we leaving behind? Is it one of hope? Is it one of exploration? And science fiction has these kind of two very, different edges of the spectrum, don't they? In terms of this Terminator dystopian, everything bad, pandemics kill everybody, to we go and discover, we go and help things, we go and rejuvenate, we can look at things about education, healthcare, we can have abundance, the replicator, the tricorder, the various things that
A
can
replicator.
fix whatever we imagine, fix a health issue, fix a lack of a resource through technology. And it's been interesting. Of course, we can connect dots backwards. It's very hard when you're looking forwards. When you look back now and do a history, and I know that's one of the projects you're working on, of looking at the history of Star Trek, and you look at these various things and think, wow, that has inspired an endeavor of humanity to put funding, resource, intellectual insights to creating these things, creating mobile phones, creating iPads, creating the tricorder, the X Prize tricorder, creating these things inspired from, in effect, Star Trek in a lot of ways. Which do you think has been maybe the biggest impact on humanity of what was maybe manifested inside the Star Trek world? And then linked, what do you think might be the next one, or what would you like the next one to be?
So I don't think it has anything to do with physical objects. I think it's the ideas in Star Trek that have inspired and helped a certain group of the population jump forward. As I was mentioning, people are inspired. They do look at Star Trek. They do see the messaging. There is the background philosophy called IDIC, IDIC, which stands for infinite diversity from infinite combinations. And it is the idea that the appreciation of all things different, everything in the universe. Now, some people might initially think in Star Trek that must be about form, because here you're in a spaceship and you're going and you're meeting aliens and people that look different. No, Star Trek really wasn't about that. It was about us in the future having come together as a society, as a human species, realizing that it's the uniqueness between us that makes us better and allows us to grow. And then from that, realizing that there must be other aliens out there who look at the universe in a different way that will allow us, if we go and meet them and learn how they look at the universe, that might help evolve our own thinking. And so, I mean, the most powerful thing in Star Trek is the ability and willingness to listen to and hear different ideas and then modify your own based on aspects of those ideas that you find useful. I mean, that's growing, that's learning, that's evolving.
That's growing, that's learning, that's adaptability, right? To imagine, to
and that's
get new
adaptability.
data and information, and then
Yes.
reevaluate my current thinking, and then
Yes.
act and behave accordingly. So,
Yes.
World's flat. Okay, I act and behave accordingly. I get new data. It's not flat. I act and behave differently. People are dying from this. We get new data and we realize and act and behave differently. Also, we think we should. For years, we've had data to say smoking kills, yet still people don't. For years, we've had various things about our environment, be that underwater, be that coral, be that anywhere, and yet still I'm frustrated by the lack of our human adaptability. The speed of it, the decision making seems so reckless, seems so short term, seems so selfish, seems so isolated, where the philosophy that you talked about of this imagination, this yes, there's other things out there and it will help us understand ourselves and hopefully leave it better for the next generations.
Hopefully.
Yeah. But we haven't been doing that.
No, we have
what
not.
do you think needs to shift? Where are the pockets of that shift of change in time, this this sort of soup between entertainment, between philanthropy, you know, all of these sort of areas of environmental activism. Where do you think the sort of tipping points and breakthroughs do you want to see? And how might we make them happen more? I'm fascinated to see what your thinking is around that.
No, I really appreciate that question. I don't know if this is the solution. In fact, I'm sure it's not the solution. There's probably many and a lot that's going to go into it. I kind of wonder if there's a lot of us and them right now, right? There's a lot of we take care of our own, we take care of ourselves, we take care of our own family. Yeah. I believe my father really was, 50 or 100 years advanced in his own intellectual thinking. I think when he thought of the world, he thought of humanity, and that we are in this together. I know these are statements that people have heard, people understand, but to truly not be fearful of everyone, but somehow think like, oh, we're only going to do this if we and everyone in my neighborhood work together, not just my little group. It feels sort of like if we all have that mentality, we're all gonna prosper a whole lot more. I don't know necessarily how to get there except through I'm going to use the word education, and I don't necessarily mean STEM, but I mean life experience, education, social emotional, psychology, these sorts of ethics, these sorts of foundation skills at a young age. I think we need to shrink down our STEM a little bit. I'm not saying get rid of science, get math, but bring in ethics and bring in a social emotional, so that you learn at a young age how to communicate your emotions and how to hear someone communicate their emotions without it being an attack, without it being aggression, without there being hostility. It is okay for someone to say, hey, that thing you did, I really didn't like that. It made me feel this way. And for that person to say, oh my God, I had no idea. My intention was to do this, and I didn't know I was hurting you. Okay, well, I just wanted to let you know. Done. We're great. Instead of, hey, you bastard, I can't believe you, if we can approach things, and this is easy for me to stand on my soapbox and say it. It's very hard to do it. Trust me. Every day I screw it up. But if we can get to a point where we're understanding everyone and more caring and more empathetic to the people around us, I think that's the solution. I mean, truthfully, one word, empathy. That alone, maybe not, but we're just too at each other's throats right now.
It's interesting, isn't it, where we're in this culture of sort of so much technical advancement, all of these exponential technologies nesting on top of each other to give us an imaginary world possible in all areas of abundance. And yet fundamentally, as humans, we're still not got the ability to accept difference, difference without judgment, difference without fear of threat, with all of those sorts of things. And so I wonder what role we envision playing to shape that future of, yes, through education, partly things like Star Trek, through entertainment, to give us almost this permission that allowing people who don't look the same as us, who don't think the same of us, to play well together. And fundamentally to see that happen, to model it, I think that's maybe more of what we need to be doing.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, no, absolutely. The ability for someone to do something that is contrary to your belief system in front of you, and instead of reacting, but taking that moment, and maybe it is their cultural way of doing so, and just at least trying to understand. You don't have to, I'm not saying anyone has to agree with it, but trying to understand maybe the why and how and what maybe would have why did they do it that way. I think that opens the door. Again, you do not have to agree with it. You can still disagree with their beliefs, but accepting. I understand if it brings harm to someone, maybe not, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
However, just acceptance, understanding, and then approach it in a hopefully calm and rational way.
I remember watching another little documentary about this tribe, and the way they dealt with death felt so different to how I have dealt with death. And the way it happened for them is that the women in this particular tribe would have a finger cut off when a family member died. And that was part of the culture, right? So you've got these elderly women with not many digits left, right? Because there's been family members that have died. And in their culture, that was, that was part of it. They were cutting out the grief, cutting out what was going on, and yet then still expecting them to prepare the food, do all of these things with a few stumps left. And for me, it was so alien. It was so different. But could I accept? Do I want to come in and educate and say, oh, maybe there's a better way of doing this? They don't have any anesthetic. They don't have, all these things. And yet they're doing this that to me is mutilation, that is so wrong, that is all of these things. And we need to stop them doing it. Where are the laws? Where are the protection? And all the things that I might have been brought up to of, no, I might go and talk about it, or we'll sing in a place together, or we'll, put someone in the ground, or we'll do it in different ways.
Yeah.
Do I accept? Do I get to a point of not only understanding, do I get to a point where I might actually love and embrace their decisions? If I present them new information and then they still make it, can I still be at peace?
Right.
And I think at these edges, at various points, if it doesn't hit your core values or your beliefs, you kind of just exist and it's okay. But if it hits your core value and your core beliefs, that's where the real friction is around adaptation and change. Do I say, I'm never going to go to that tribe, I'm not going to be there, and I'm going to exclude myself from it? Or actually, I want to go and wipe them out because what they're doing is wrong. They're causing harm. And I just find this, perpetual stories throughout human life, come to pass time and time again. And maybe that is part of what life is. Maybe is that there are these diversities and we're still figuring it out as we go along, right?
Yeah, no, that's crazy to hear. And yes, should we ever meet aliens one day, and you said the word aliens, can you imagine what their culture might be? Or at least the way they look at things or the way they do things? My hope is they're certainly more civilized than us, and hopefully most of the things they do make sense. But I'm sure since they are aliens, they will certainly do things that are counterintuitive and different.
And coming back to your point about in the ocean, it's full of aliens. Most of the other animals on the planet, when we were at X Prize and we were listening to one of the ideas about being able to communicate with other species, we still can't really have a conversation and communicate with other species on our own planet, let alone species on another planet, about what their language is, whether that is telepathic, whether that is, physical, sound, all sorts of different ways of communicating to the mitochondria, to all the mycelium, to all these sorts of things that we have such a limited understanding currently, yet an amazing, we believe, curiosity. But maybe it's just curiosity on our own terms.
It is on our own terms, 100% on our own terms. Yep, 100%.
So as you think about what you're working on right now, what you're most excited about, what you're inspiring in any of those realms, from the stem cell healthcare work that you're funding to, entertainment projects, what are you excited about and what are you working on at the moment, Ron?
The projects I'm most excited about, and just to be clear, this is Hollywood. Some of these things, I certainly don't want to say they'll never happen, because these are very personal, and one way or another, I'll make sure they happen. But there's a movie based on my father. I am very proud of my father. He lived many lives. He was a World War II bomber pilot and flew something like 80 missions over Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands. After that, he became a transcontinental pilot for Pan Am and flew one of their longest flights from New York to Johannesburg. And then while he was deadheading back, he was on a plane that crashed in the Syrian desert. He was the only surviving officer and helped leave the 11 remaining people to safety. After that, he briefly had a stint as an airline crash investigator. He then became a sergeant in the LAPD and rose to the ranks in Hollywood, and then became a speechwriter for the chief of police. And then while he was doing that, they were doing shows like Dragnet. and they were asking for stories from cops. And he realized, first of all, he could make a lot more money doing that, and secondly, he could write better than some of those guys that were writing those shows. And then he had this career of cop shows and westerns and all these things. All of this was before Star Trek, and people know his life story. He has a fascinating life that I really want to share with the world because it explains where Star Trek came from. When I say the word education, I don't mean everyone needs to be a bomber pilot, an officer in the LAPD, but I'm saying life experience, I think, gives you a certain wisdom and a perspective to be more accepting of other points of view. Dare I say this? Yeah. I'm going to compare it to a dog. If you have a dog, you leave him fenced up in your backyard, never sees anyone, never does anything. The minute that dog is introduced to someone else, they might be aggressive because they're scared. Someone knocks on the gate, they're going to bark. But when you socialize that dog, they are more palatable. Am I comparing humanity to a dog? Yeah, maybe I am a little bit, but I'm just saying the more exposure, experience we have, the more perspective we have, and the more likely we are to be accepting of different ideas. Anyhow, through this, my father's story, I hope to sort of share a bit of that, and also hopefully that will inspire people to want to be open to new ideas.
And also give themselves permission to evolve their own selves.
Yeah.
In that our portfolio of what becomes our life through learning out loud, through lived experiences, can take so many different forms.
Yeah.
And whilst you can have people experience the same things, you can have 20 years experience, but actually it's just 1 year repeated 20 times, is that it's not only going and doing those things, it's the way you show up when you do it. So when we do socialize, when we go out, what is that collective mindset? What is that viewpoint of having safety to have diverse thought, not echo chambers?
Yes.
I go and visit these things, but I'm coming as me and only me, and I'll hear the things, but actually it's just noise. Yes. But am I actually really listening, observing, and seeing? And it's that naive eye, that childlike mind to go and discover. And I think that for me, for a lot of, Star Trek was the just beautiful naivety of when you're discovering to just be constantly asking questions. And I want to bring us into a point now of where we're at as a working society in terms of where we've given applause, jobs, checks, loyalty, promotions for expertise and for knowing how something is done. And where we're entering now into where knowing how things are done is far more open, far more about experimentation. We don't know all of the answers. And so we've got to figure out things. We've got to learn much faster and quicker. And we add in, at the moment, a lot of AI, for example, AI impacting, creative writing, Hollywood writers, everything. It's pervasive, and it's becoming a team member for people, a team member in a colleague for a company, for a team that is working on all sorts of different things about how they might collaborate with things like AI. How are you currently experimenting? Are you currently experimenting with it in your world or in your lines of life? Take this project around your father and wanting to put that together. Are you experimenting with different technologies to look at how that might get manifested or thought about in different ways of using AI? Or is it still traditional in the way that you're approaching it, that you've done things before? And if it is, where else might there be areas that you might explore and experiment with technology differently in parts and projects that you're involved in?
No, I do appreciate the question. I hate to say it. I guess in terms of Star Trek and my limited understanding, I am not the sole person doing Star Trek. In fact, I'd say I'm a ring or two sort of out from the creatives that are putting a lot of these shows together. So I can't tell you day to day what they are doing. I can tell you that when it comes to technology and certainly AI, I mean, there's no fighting it. It's coming whether you like it or not. you might be able to slow it down. And sure, we want to be as intelligent as we can with it, and do the best we can to introduce it to the world in the safest way, which, I don't know how and if that's going to happen. But AI is coming, so I'm just trying to embrace it. Right now I see it as a great tool just for me personally. And
Healthcare, diagnosis, Alzheimer's, all of these sorts of areas where humans get stuff wrong, AI will get it wrong. Hopefully, together we'll get more right.
That is it. That is 100% it. And I'll tell you, my limited experience with AI is, I just one day told it to write a Star Trek story, and it nailed it. It nailed it in the sense that it was science fiction. It was about aliens coming to Earth. It was about our inability to communicate with them at first, and there being sort of this initial sort of fear and maybe even hostility. But in the end, we realized that it was a misunderstanding, and that they were peaceful, and then we became friends. So it wasn't just a sci-fi story. They got sort of the Star Trek sort of, in my opinion, through line of this understanding. And I was like, oh my God, I mean, AI's already got Star Trek.
It's amazing.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
You talk about, but then you have to bring in, it's going to put a lot of people out of work. And I do not have an answer for that.
No.
Yes.
And
yes, it will put a lot of people out of work.
It will. If
I don't know what to say.
No. And if you take, you mentioned, there is various layers within any large project that people come around, and there'll be, multitude of different areas, whether it's costume, whether it's writers, whether it's, post-production, all of these components where it can provide different aspects. I remember, I need to send you the link actually, but it was about the workflow of one of the challenges of growing entertainment in terms of reach, language issues, dubbing, etc., and then reshooting on location being barriers to, cost of doing that, and how AI is trying to evolve some of those things, but yet still keep people involved in the loop. So rather than a deep fake of, oh, I've got this actor who I didn't really do anything with and I've placed them in, versus it's somebody I'm working with, but I didn't get the exact shot I want in this particular setup. I can place that in, model it out, involve the actor or actress in it. They still get an element of being paid, can influence, and it looks just like them just for that little moment. They can record their piece. So I think there's lots of little evolutions around both the ethics and the economics. And then the amazing part of where historically we would have dubbing with different languages, and it would be a bit funny to really engage with different language versions, to now it feeling so still like the heart of those people, perfectly mapped and stuff. I think we'll just explode the opportunity of entertainment. And a bit like with the riders who are, or any area, yes, it will displace a lot of people, but for a lot of them, it's the ones who it's us plus it, I think is a real opportunity, certainly in this transition. And then, yes, there will be replacement. Computer was a job role. It's now a physical object. How many other things that were a job role will be a piece of software? There is going to be natural evolution. Challenge is the speed, right?
But it is up to us. It's how we use it. Because as you say, it might become a tool in the movie making workplace. Well, I mean, AI is not there yet, but pretty soon someone on their computer will be able to create a movie with actors that we all know and love, as the technology gets better and better, but it'll be quality. I mean, remember, we just had a couple channels on the television, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and just a few shows out. Now there's, an onslaught
of fishing line with little objects.
Right? Now we've got YouTube, we've got everyone creating their own content. They're not going to listen to the studios who say, well, you can use it, but only in a certain way. They're just not. And sure, they might try to ban some of this stuff, but the genie's out of the bottle. The best we can do is hope, and I'm going to use the word educate people on how to best use this technology as in a way that is complementary to our current systems, to our current industries, and hopefully just all work together. I mean, that's why I say just everyone working together is a better idea, because when we're trying to prevent people from doing things, that doesn't work.
I think it's an interesting challenge, isn't it, where certainly in the capitalistic kind of realm of, oh, this is mine, this is my competitive advantage, I want this market share, and I'm competing. And all of our corporate structure has been around that oh, if it's a job and we're both going for it, I want to make sure you don't and I get it. Or, you know, there's that sale, I want to make sure I get that. There's only this one slot. And this scarcity has led us to think and behave in this current way that we do. Polarization of the way we think, our ethics of it. So we've built AI on the bedrock of that foundation of our current phase of society. So whilst there are pockets of people that exist around X Prize, around abundance, around all of those things that want to solve healthcare and longevity, that want to do things that are inclusive, that want to work together, that want to unite, there is still others that feel under pressure, fearful. I'm running out of breath. I'm underwater. Do I go forward or do I go back?
Right.
My decision making's harmed, and all I've got in my hand is my knife. So that's all I can use.
Yeah.
So I think we have this very real reality that it is going to be used in ways we don't want it to be used.
Yeah.
You know, a gun's inert. We put it in one hand, we're kind of okay with it in another hand. Maybe a gun's a bit of a bad example, but maybe like a knife, you know, if that allows us to cut some food that we couldn't cut before, some bread, whatever it might be, that's good. In someone else, it's very damaging. It's still just this inert knife.
Yeah.
So AI that's now in the hands of somebody that can solve a disease or create polarization or create harm by, you know, a political viewpoint that upsets somebody, that creates a riot, that creates something in a particular country that then ends up in war. They're going to be going on. What I think we have, I believe, a responsibility and legacy to do is, alongside education, is to inspire that hope. And when you started in that way of what Star Trek has done, what it continues to do, and what I'm sure your work in the foundation, in the entertainment, in all of these areas, is to inspire this opportunity of hope, of inspiring, of how would I like it for my children, for my grandchildren, when we first started, you know, what are you grateful for? What's been an achievement? To hang out with my 10-year-old son, you know, and have happy time together. Ultimately, that, I guess, is what many people want to do, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also, you know, certainly in a small way, leave the world better than I found it, but also set him up to make the world a better place, not just for himself, but everyone around him. I don't know, this idea, I'm not going to live forever. I don't know how many years I have left, probably just a decade, 2, if 3, if I'm lucky. But I'm still, that doesn't mean I don't want to make, in my tiniest way, the world a better place for everyone who I will never know. So that is what Star Trek has taught me, and that's something that I'm very proud of and want to continue.
Do you think somewhere inside everybody we all have that?
I do. So it's, you know, so this is where I get, I don't know if imposter syndrome is the right thing, but, you know, I grew up very privileged. I haven't had to have a lot of the concerns that many people in this world have. I haven't had to witness and experience some of the horrible things that a lot of people in this world have had to deal with. And so it's very hard for me to say what other people have and don't have. Sure, I think if everyone has opportunity and abundance and has less need in terms of the essentials in life, sure, I think it's much easier for that to come out in someone. But I'm fairly certain that if life has been filled with strife, it's quite a bit more challenging. So me standing here saying, just make it great, just inspire, easy for me to say, even hard for me to do, but certainly harder for other people as well.
We can only envisage it from our own lens, right? And whether it's homelessness, whether it's Viktor Frankl and his work about, you know, you're locked up, everything's taken away from you. Now, can you still be true to that when everything seems bleak, strife, all of those sorts of things? Yes, it's harder. But I have this gut hope that it's actually a element of our DNA of humans that we are, most of us, wired to want to create value, connection, love, betterment for ourselves and others. Whether we are able to manifest that in the fullness of ways because of certain mind, circumstance, and things is what make the tapestry of everybody.
Can I? So I want an example, and you might be able to describe this better for me. You know, one of the best feelings in life that I've had, and I would assume people would agree, whenever there is, unfortunately, something somewhat catastrophic, but people come together to help rescue a person or whatever, and people just, you know, from everywhere will just come there from all walks of life. Nothing matters anymore, but they're all working together to help as a team this one person, and they're able to save them, pull them out of the well, whatever the scenario is. The 13 lives in the cave are a great example. The feeling, I wasn't there, but I've had other scenarios, and we've all had an aspect of this in our life. That feeling you get when you work together with people and your outcome is victorious in the sense that you have helped someone survive or better. That is like the ultimate feeling. If we could somehow thirst and crave for that feeling and want to get that feeling, like that's working with people. That's just, even a simple act on the street can have an element of that feeling. It doesn't have to be a catastrophic scenario. So it's trying to achieve that. That is a drug that is healthy and something that I think we should all want to take more often.
It's these elements of service, isn't it? The service to others, the value creation, the connection, and the transcendence of what and who we are as we discover through life. And I think many of us are facing a future of multiple catastrophic events in relative to our own catastrophic view, whatever that may be for us, because in an uncertain world, the chances of that happening are higher. So what we're working on, what we're trying to equip people with, is those skills, those tools, those strategies to deal with uncertainty, to be able to adapt when I was healthy, I'm not healthy. I had a job, I don't have a job. There was people in my life, now there's not people in my life. How do we muster the skills, the tools, and the support networks, the systems to be able to, at some points, lend the hand, and other points say, I need a hand. That's, I think, the little dent that I'm working on, that this reality of trying to unite humanity, big challenge. But if I can unite me and you for a bit, for a half-hour conversation, and we feel energized to go about our day, to hug someone we love, to show up in a different way, to have another diverse thought, that's great. And so as we close out, because I'm conscious of time, Rod, and I love hanging out with you. I loved
I'm loving the conversation.
Into the early hours in LA on the meaning of life with Salim. There's some moments that you just can't unexperience. But I'm into two pieces. One is a question I always ask every guest, Rod, and it is around curiosity. And it's, when was the last time you did something for the first time, and what was it?
I'm very sorry. I don't know. I mean, this is not an interesting answer. My son and I went to a light show last night. That's terrible. I got to come up with something better than that.
Let me challenge you, Rod.
Please. Oh, you're challenging me. This is a challenge.
Why does it have to be better than that?
Well, truthfully, I want it to be interesting, and I want it to be not just interesting to you or everyone listening, interesting to me.
To you.
Last night was nice. We had a good time. Okay. It was a new experience. We hadn't done it, and it was very nice to do it. I want it to be really cool, and I want to be excited about it. So that's why.
Isn't it interesting? When we're in a moment and we're maybe under the water, we're there and we're put under a pressure of a question of a situation, and we're overthinking, how do I judge myself on my answer? How will the person who's asked me judge? How will others think? And I want it to be something. I want it to be something that shows up the best of those things. And I find it fascinating because I've now, I know 120 people have asked that question too, right? Unexpectedly. So I don't prime them. And I'm just really finding it fascinating about, are people uncomfortable? Are they not? Do they come up with an idea that they think should be the idea or the answer? And sometimes people have written me, Rod, handwritten letters afterwards that they really thought about it and wanted to send it to me. And one of the things was, writing a handwritten letter was part of something, doing something new or they haven't done for a long time and various stuff. And I just want to share two little themes.
Please.
One is a true unique experience. Oh, I skydived, I did this or whatever is there. And the other part that I found more interesting in this discovery is when they've done something, but with new eyes. So it doesn't have to be brand spanking new, but I've gone in with new eyes to that experience. And I think that's the beauty of this paradox of life, that if I go on a dog walk every day, how can I make that a first time dog walk? If I go somewhere with my son that I go regularly, how can I make it the first time I've done that? If it's my wife that I tell her I love her and I kiss her, how can I make it like the first time?
That's beautiful.
That's what I've learned from this is first time doesn't have to be lateral, that logical thought, but sometimes the naive mind or the naive eyes to experience something that is all the time just opens up another dimension of things. So I'd love to leave that with you, of that thought around doing things for the first time. Don't have to be brand new.
That's going to stick with me because I do truly appreciate the sometimes the things I do on repetition that might be mundane. I will think about what can I do, just a little bit differently to make it fresh and exciting.
Yeah. Close a sense off.
Maybe not even exciting, just a different way. Yeah.
Close a sense off. Do something that you would normally do, but try and do it with your eyes shut. Or do it without having the arms, do cooking. There's an interesting bit one of my co-founder did, cooking where you can't use your arms, but your partner are your arms. And they're seeing, they can't see it. Just different little things that you do all the time and try and remove an element as well as adding elements. Do something with the kids when it's dark and you've got to go around, and how do you navigate the house? Just these little moments, I think, are part of dealing with us for the uncertainty. When the fire's on, when, the wildfire happens, when this happens, that just being more comfortable when things aren't routine, and you don't need to be non-routine to get you more comfortable in them. And so the last piece, if people are really, and I got no doubt, inspired by perhaps some of the projects, but maybe some of the other areas around your philanthropy, some of your foundation work, some of the advancing human health in these areas that they really want, and they've been inspired by your own journey, how is it best that people can collaborate with you or with what you're up to and what you're doing? What is the avenues that are available to people for that?
It's a great question. I've stayed off social media for the longest time, but recently, I guess I've gotten kind of back into that. I still don't know if there's a collaboration in that. I don't know if I have an answer for you right now. I certainly can be reached through social media, but at Rod
even
Roddenberry,
if it's not your foundation, the areas that you work in, if they're inspired,
I can give you the websites, roddenberry.com and then roddenberryfoundation.org are the two places. And I'm very proud of our foundation. We're smaller than many, bigger than some. But what we really try to do is focus on impact and make sure we're not just giving grants out and not paying attention. We want to make sure our money is used the most effective way that it can be for things that are making the future a better place. So by all means, please check those places out. But like I said, I'm still trying to figure it out too.
As we
Everything.
all are. As we all are. And I'm truly blessed to have had the opportunity to meet you and hang out in LA for a few days and then to follow up today. I've been looking forward to it. I know that many in my family, my cousins, Steve and Helen, are huge fans of Star Trek. And I said that I was having this conversation. I weaved in a few of their questions for them and
Perfect.
just keep being you. And
Thank you.
I just feel proud to have had a moment in time to experience a little chapter of our lives together and hopefully inspire a few people as we go on.
Well, and I've appreciated this. The questions are unique and different. The conversation was different. We didn't even start right in Star Trek. So I do appreciate conversations, whether they're being sent out to everyone in the world or not, that do make me think a little differently and do ask me questions that I don't normally have, and even point out some good ways to maybe look at my next few steps this day, slightly with a different eye, I hope. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Do you have the level of adaptability to survive and thrive the rapid changes ahead? Has your resilience got more comeback than a yo-yo? Do you have the ability to unlearn in order to reskill, upskill and break through? Find out today and uncover your adaptability profile and score, your AQ. Visit AQai.io to gain your personalized report across 15 scientifically validated dimensions of adaptability. For a limited time, enter code PODCAST65 for a complimentary AQ assessment. AQai, transforming the way people, teams and organizations navigate change. Thank you for listening to this episode of Decoding AQ. Please make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast directory, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Please do leave a review and be sure to tune in next time for more insights from our amazing guests.